Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Coding with T. Today we are going to learn how to perform Firebase phone number authentication in Flutter. First, let's quickly have a look what we are going to achieve today. Let me just run the application. You can see welcome screen has appeared. We have login and sign up. Previously, in the previous tutorial, we learned both login, sign up and log out using email and password. But for today's tutorial, click on sign up. And this time I'm just going to use the phone number. And when I'm going to press the sign up button, it will send a message on this device and then it will be redirected automatically towards the dashboard screen. So let's try it. Hit the sign up button. This is the OTP screen. If it's not going to do it automatically, we have to enter the OTP manually. So the code has arrived and we redirected to the dashboard. Now let's try to send the code on another device, but first we have to close it, and this time when we are going to log in again, it's not going to go towards the login and sign up screens or the welcome screen, but redirected towards the dashboard. Because of the previous tutorial, we created how to keep the state of the user, and also over here at the top we have a logout option. So when we are going to click on this, it will be logged out and again let the user sign up. So this time I'm going to enter another phone number which is not currently inside this device but will send the phone number on another device. So we can enter the phone number manually. So let's click on the sign up. This time let's wait for the code to arrive. So we have code arrived 771288. And at the last digit it will automatically going to execute the on submit function. And you can see we are successfully redirected towards the dashboard. So this is what we are going to achieve today. As you can see, we are creating Flutter login application. Design portion has already completed and now we are creating the backend portion, and this is the third tutorial of phone number authentication. And previously, in the first tutorial, we already learned how to set up the Firebase in Flutter. I'll drop the link of the Firebase playlist as well as the complete Flutter login playlist down below in the description. You can get the link from there. Okay, let's break down the today's tutorial. You can see you're divided into two parts. The first one is the setup and second one is the coding. The first thing we have to do is to enable Firebase phone authentication inside the Firebase console. Once enabled, then we have to add SHA-1 and SHA-256 in the console. And the third one is for the reCAPTCHA. This is a new thing that Google uses or the Firebase uses for the authentication, for the verification. Android device verification, we have to enable it. Once done, we are going to perform the coding. We will get the data from user, which is the phone number, and send the code on the phone number. Once the code has been sent, we will get that OTP, which is a 6-digit OTP, and pass it on to the second function to verify it and allow the user to log in. Today's tutorial is very simple, so make sure to watch the video till end because otherwise you might have some confusion. So without wasting time, let's get started. First and foremost, you can get all the links and all the code from codingwitht.com, so don't worry about it. Link will be in the description. So this is the Firebase documentation for the phone authentication. Again, I'll drop the link. Inside the phone authentication, you can see the first thing is we have to enable phone as a sign-in method inside the Firebase console. So let's open the Firebase console using console.firebase.google.com. We will open the project we have already created in our previous tutorials. If you're new, you can watch the previous videos. Okay, let's go to authentication. Go to sign-in methods. Inside the sign-in method, you can see I have already enabled, but to enable it, go to add new provider. Click on this phone number and make sure to enable it from here. Click on the save button and that's it. Okay, so once enabled, let's head back to documentation. The second thing is we have to add SHA-1 or SHA-256 inside the Firebase console. So head back over here. Click on this gear icon, go to project settings. Okay, in here you can see we have two apps, Android and iOS. For the Android, we have to add SHA certificate fingerprints. We can add these two certificates over here, but first let's try to get these. There are two methods, but we will go for the recommended one. So let's get SHA certificates. For that, we have to open our file explorer, go to C inside the users, go to the main user, and then you can see we have .android folder. Open it, and inside you can see we have a debug.keystore. So this must be over here to run the command, and then we are going to right click, open in terminal. If you don't have option to open it in the terminal, because we are currently targeting users Tamu currently this location. So if you don't know how to open it in a terminal, you just have to write cd and then you just have to paste this command right next to it, hit enter, and you will be pointing to the same directory. So once we are pointing to this directory, we have to run this command. And here you can see I have all three commands. Again, I am going to drop these commands inside the description below. You can get it from the coding with T. For the Windows, we just have to copy this command, paste it over here. But remember that we are not going to use it like this, because we will not paste this command, hit enter, and you will get that file does not exist in the debug.keystore, because we have to add a complete path over here, the path that we are currently pointing to, this path. So copy it inside the, paste it inside over here, hit enter, and you will get all the details. This is the SHA-1 and this is SHA-256. So you have to copy it next to these columns. Go to Firebase console, add fingerprint, paste it, and you can see it's automatically going to highlight SHA-1. Save this one, copy SHA-256. Most of the time only 256 or SHA-1 is going to be very fine, but not for the confusions. Just add both, save it, and you can see we have both added. The next step is so we have completed two steps for the setup. The third one is the Android device verification. You just have to go to console.cloud.google.com. Inside the APIs, you have to go for androidcheck.googleapis.com and make sure you have to click on this enable button. Currently it's enabled. Once the setup has been completed, let's head back towards our project. Inside, in case if you are getting some error, you just have to open the terminal, run this command, Flutter Fire config, hit enter. This is just going to override all the previous activities, and it's also going to add SHA-1 inside the files. You can see it's currently running pub upgrade, so it's basically upgrading the things. There's a list of projects we have already logged in. If you're confused over here that how we logged in and how all these projects are being listed, then you have to watch the first tutorial, which is to set up the Firebase, because we have already set up. So that's why, and we are also logged in. That's why we are getting all these projects. So we are going for the Flutter login application, hit enter, Android and iOS, again hit enter. Just going to get the fresh data. And you can see Firebase options.dart inside the lib folder. Over here, it's already created Firebase options. So it's want to make sure that we want to override. Yes, we want to override, and that's it. Configuration has been completed. And just add on, let's just clean the project, run the Flutter clean, and then we're going to run Flutter forget, hit enter. So our application is now neat and clean. Let's minimize it, and now let's try to start coding. At the top, you can see we have already defined Firebase initializations. Previously, we were working on the authentication repository. So again, if you're new, you can watch the previous videos. If you don't want to previous videos, no worries. Inside the repository, previously we have created an authentication repository. Okay, we are inside the authentication repository we created in our previous tutorial for the login and sign up using email and password. And this is when the user loads, or when the application runs, or the application is going to be opened, it's going to redirect to a new screen. Let me show you the code as well if you're new. So let's not confuse with this tutorial. The reason I am adding all the Firebase inside over here, because the design should separately be placed inside the design file. Backend logic should be separate inside the backend controller. And the same goes for the Firebase. All the authentication related to Firebase should be inside the authentication repository. Okay, now we're here. Let's try to create a function. Okay, it's a return type is void. It's a phone authentication, and we have just passed phone number. It's dynamic, but you can define string over here because it's a string type phone number. So first and foremost, go to pubspec.yaml file. Inside, you have to call Firebase core and also Firebase authentication. Once added, over here you just have to call the Firebase auth.instance, and using this instance, authentication.verify phone number, and these are all the functions that we have to create. Control Alt L to align. Okay, first and foremost, we have to pass the phone number. So let's create a phone number, pass the phone number to it. This is a string type, and also this should be a string type. Then on the verification completed, we will get credentials, user credential. We will add functionality later on. On verification field, we are going to get the exception inside the e variable. Then when the code will be sent, inside it we are going to have two things. First one will be verification ID, and second one will be resend token. And then inside the timeout, again we are going to pass the verification ID. Okay, let me just explain, but before we have to make sure that all the queries should be inside the await, and it should be an async function. Just have to add async over here. Okay, now first let's try to understand what this query is doing. We have to add a wait sign because we want to perform all the queries asynchronously. So we have to call await at the start of the query, and async over here. Future and void is optional. So the first thing we have to pass the phone number to this query. So it will get the phone number, and this verification completed function will be executed when the phone number is sent on the same device which requested the phone number. This function will automatically be executed, and without asking the user, it's going to redirect the user towards the next screen in case of success scenario, right? And if this automatic authentication or verification is not going to be executed, then the code will be sent using this function, the verification ID, and we have to create user credentials. We are going to create in a minute, and then using that credentials, we are going to verify if the code is valid or invalid. This code auto retrieval timeout is going to be used when there is a time bound thing and we want to resend the verification code after some time of interval. So then we have to use this function. And when the verification field will be called, there must be something going on, and we will use this to throw some exception. So let's start with the first one. Over here, we have to again add a wait, because we are going to call authentication dot sign in with credentials, and we are going to pass the credential over here, not credentials, it's a credential. And let's make this async. So when the verification completed will be called, we just want to make sure that user is sign in using the credentials passed over here. If you don't want to let the user sign in, or you want to perform something else, then you have to perform it over here. The next one is the code sent. When the code is sent, we need to get this verification ID and let the user enter its OTP. So it's going to take a time. That's why we are not going to perform anything over here, but we want to get this OTP for the later use. That's why we are going to create a variable at the top. Verification ID is equal to null at the time, means nothing, but it will be observable. Now this observer is going to be observed this verification ID. So whenever there is change inside the verification ID, it's going to automatically update it's all children's. So let's use this verification ID inside the code sent. This dot verification ID dot value is equal to verification ID. So basically this value is going to be called the string inside it, because it is a string type verification ID. So this verification is not a type of string, but it's a RX string. You can see over here it's a RX string because it's observable. To typically call the string, we have to call the dot value, right? So we have verification ID. And same to keep things simple, inside the code auto retrieval, let's say we are also going to get the verification ID. If there is change or we resend the code after some time of interval, we also need this verification ID inside this. So we initialize it. Now let's see the error. Inside the verification code, we get many multiple codes, but for now, let's say we have e.code, invalid phone number. When the phone number is invalid, we're going to show the snack bar. Else, if it's not the case, you can give it any error, but I'm just adding something went wrong. Try again. Basically, you can get all the error codes from here: Firebase documents, Firebase documentation, authentication, admin, and errors. I'll also drop the link in the description, and these are a bunch of the things that we can play with. Okay, now our phone authentication has completed, but remember we want to create another function. Return type will be void verify OTP. This is going to be called when user enter the OTP, and we will pass OTP over here. Now because we want to let the user sign in using the OTP, you can see at the top we have sign in with credentials. The credentials was automatically created and passed, but in here we don't have automatically created credentials. So that's why we first have to call the wait sign, because it's an async function. Then again using auth dot sign in with credentials, and this time we have to call form auth provider dot credentials, and inside you can see we have to pass the verification ID and the SMS code, which is the OTP get by the user. So verification ID is this dot verification ID dot value, and then the code is basically the OTP code. Add semicolon at the end, control alt L. Basically we can change this void to boolean, and as its return type, as it's async, so we have to wrap it with the future. This line is going to return the credentials, so we can get the credentials like this. And if let's say credentials dot user not is equal to null, we want to return true when it, because it's verified. Otherwise we want to return as false, and let's add return type at the start. So basically the statement is an if else. It's saying that if user credential dot user not is equal to null, means the user is logged in, return true, otherwise return false. Okay, once these two functions created, we will go towards the sign up form widget. So this is the text field that is using the phone number. So we want to get the data from this field, and when this user is going to press the on press button. And in the previous tutorial we learned that how we can use form widget using the form key. You just have to create a key at the top, assign the key to the form, and over and down below in here inside the on press button, if the form key current state validated, because there is a validation, then we were calling the register user and performing email and password authentication. You can see we were passing email and password, but let's just comment it for today's tutorial, and let's just call signup controller dot instance dot phone authentication, and inside we want to pass controller dot phone number dot text, and also make sure to add trim to remove the spaces. Okay, now let's head back towards the controller. Okay, how we are calling this, because we don't want to add logic inside our design. So at the top I have called controller, which is the signup controller, using get.put. So once we have controllers, we assigned all the values to all the text fields, and when the user is going to hit the enter button using signup controller.instance, we are heading towards this function, which is an empty function inside our signup controller. Let me just show you as well inside the features. You can see we have sign up controller over here, and inside the screens, inside the sign up, we have form widget over here. So this is the design and this is the logic. We now head back toward the controller, and in here you can see we are calling the phone authentication and passing the phone number. So same way we are going to call the authentication repository, and we are going to call this function in which we have to pass this phone number. So at the top you can see we use static authentication repository and get instance created. The same way Firebase auth is using the instance, so we have also created our instance. Head back, we have to call authentication repository dot instance dot phone authentication, and inside we have to pass the phone number we get from over here, and that's it. So basically this function is calling the phone authentication. It is going to perform get the phone number, try to complete the verification, then do send the code, call this function, and then from the OTP we have to call the verify OTP. So let's go to the OTP controller. Same way I have created OTP controller over here, and inside the forget password you can see we have OTP screen created right over here. So let's go to OTP controller. This is a simple controller extending getX controller, and again I have created a static instance of this controller. Create a function verify OTP. We will pass string and it will be an async function, because we want to use again the same way authentication repository.instance, but this time we are not calling phone authentication, but we are calling the second function, which is the verify OTP, and we will pass the OTP get inside this function, and you can see we are getting whatever the result is inside this is verified, because this function is returning boolean over here, and using this is verified we can perform the redirection. If it's verified, we will get towards the dashboard and remove all the screens using get.off. Otherwise, we will simply close this OTP controller and get back to the previous activity. So far, we are done with the coding. Now let's try to run the application. If you have any confusion and if you have any question related to this topic, you can ask me down below in the comments. One more thing, we have to call this verify OTP from the OTP screen over here. If you follow the design, we created the OTP text field using a specific plugin. So inside you can see inside the on submit, we will get the code over here, and we were printing the code last time, but for today's tutorial we don't want to print it. Okay, let's remove the previous code. We are going to get this code, and we also want to pass the code over inside the next button, because there are two scenarios. So let's first create a variable, OTP type variable, and we are going to assign this OTP with this code, because let's say when this field is automatically going to be filled using 6 digits, then this OTP, then this code will be fetched over here and this on submit will be executed. But let's say if there is some error, its field is not going to be automatically calling this on submit, then we need to press this next button. So we are going to call OTP controller dot instance dot verify OTP, pass the OTP, same inside the second. So we'll pass same inside the next button. So if in case it's not working, this button should execute and get the code from here, from this code, and pass to the next screen. So we have our application running. But in here we forget one thing inside the form widget, when we are going to call this sign up controller for authentication, and we also want to redirect towards to the OTP screen. Now when the authentication process has started, we will switch towards our OTP screen. So now let's try to run the application. Click on sign up. You first have to enter the phone number. Make sure to add a country code, then add your phone number. Open the run method. Let's delete everything. click on the sign up, and you can see we redirected towards the next screen, and it's currently waiting for the SMS to arrive. You can see SMS has arrived, and because SMS arrived on the same device, so we automatically redirected to the dashboard screen. If in case we are going to receive the OTP on another device, we will get the same results. So let me quickly show you. Okay, first let's try to close this application and open it again. And you can see we have again redirected towards the dashboard, not towards our login and sign up, because of the previous tutorial we created the on ready function. So again, if you're new, you can watch the previous tutorial. So let's just close this. I have added a sign out button over there, the logout button. Okay, so our application is logged out. Now click on the sign up. Let's paste another number which is not currently inside this device and click on the sign up. Let's just wait for the code to arrive. Okay, so code has arrived, which is 015910, and that's it. This is the code. In here you can see we have an error, which is the OTP controller not found. You need to call get output. So if you are facing this error, this means that inside the main you can define your OTP controller, and also at the top of the OTP screen, when the screen loads, you can call its instance like this: OTP controller get output. OTP controller is just going to create its instance. The good practice is to create all the instances of the controllers inside the main.dart. Click on sign up, add number, delete the data, hit sign up, wait for the message, enter the OTP, and that's it. You can see we have automatically redirected towards the dashboard. So this is what we have created today in today's tutorial. I hope you learned something new. If you learned something new, please like the video, and if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified about the next videos or the upcoming videos. Again, you can get the code from the description below, and thank you for watching. Take care. Allah Hafiz.